Hi, I'm Morgan Hines. I'm a senior reporter for Phocuswire, and I'm here today in the Phocuswire studio at the Phocuswright conference in Barcelona. I have with me Davey of Travalyst and James Lever of Weeva, and I'm really excited to chat with you both about sustainability sensibilities. So let's dive right in. I really want to start with certification. I know that there's a lot of conversation happening around that, and you're working on certification vetting. Can you tell me a little bit about how that's going?
Sure. So as you both will know, in sustainability in travel, there is a ton going on certification. In just the accommodation sector alone, there's over 100 certification bodies that are doing amazing work to vet the efforts that hotels all over the world are undertaking to make our industry more positively impactful. But on the flip side, that can be really confusing for consumers to see so many different labels and initiatives. So Travalyst has been heeding the feedback that partners of ours like Booking.com are hearing from their consumers directly. I think they found in a recent survey that 45% of travelers view properties that have a sustainability certification or label as much more appealing. But 67% are confused and think that platforms should be all using consistent labels and consistent terminology. So Travalyst has really taken that on board, and we have launched a certifications initiative. Okay. This is all governed and overseen by our independent advisory group, which is a body of globally renowned experts in sustainable tourism, scientists, academics. And together they have put together 3 criteria against which Travalyst is essentially assessing those certification bodies for compliance. So very soon we will have a master list of the certification bodies that adhere to those criteria, and then our partners, and this is the Travalyst coalition of some of the biggest travel and tech platforms globally, the OTAs, Google, the meta search platforms, who are then going to be able to align on the certifications that they show to their consumers. So we're driving that degree of consistency that just isn't available today.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So since it's so difficult for consumers to read at this point, is there any tips you would give for consumers as to, and other businesses too, looking to work with hotels that have met those criteria? Is there anything right now that you would suggest they look for, or will it become less confusing once this process is complete?
For sure. I think we've all got to be driving towards alignment. So Travalyst is all about bringing clear, consistent, and credible sustainability information to the mainstream. We've got to achieve scale if we're going to truly transition our sector towards a sustainable future. So I would encourage everybody to be looking at alignment and not creating new initiatives or more sort of fragmentation in that space, but driving to collaborate and to align as much as possible. Certifications are really crucial as we see the regulatory landscape unfolding, and quite rightly the requirement for more substantiation of sustainability claims. Certification bodies provide a really valuable tool and a really valuable service for the hospitality sector. So I'd be encouraging folks to make sure that they are investing in aligned ways, that operators themselves are absolutely looking at their journey towards certification, and hopefully Travalyst can help that by providing this master list so that hotels and operators know if they're going to go down the journey of certification, they can be confident that that will then be shown on their listings across the OTAs and the other platforms, and done in a consistent and clear way that can truly help consumers see that and understand it.
And I think just to add the kind of certification, your point, Sally, is on it being a journey. I think it very much is a journey. Sure. Yeah. And as a sustainability platform that helps people on these journeys, there's lots of different certifications that apply as your growth and as your maturity develops. Right. And I think one of the biggest problems with certification is a lot of it currently stems around compliance, really, of governance, really. So you can have an amazing policy, but actually what Weeva believes is you need to be backed by data. Right. So really it's certification to be third-party vetted, which is a requirement of the Green Claims Directive and the changes in Booking.com. Yeah. But it's also to have the data, to know with assurance that you've got that. And so those two things combined, but as we say, it's a journey. It's you have to start and develop and grow those systems together.
So with that in mind, you have so many partners. What are the challenges that they're seeing along this journey right now? And how is that playing out in terms of navigating those?
Yeah, so I guess from a certification and a sustainability challenges, I think the small independent hotels really struggle with understanding kind of why they're doing it. I suppose is the biggest problem, right? So a lot of hotels think that it's super expensive to become sustainable. And actually, in some respects, once you have data, you can understand where the opportunities are. And so you can make savings that essentially offset. And really, it's about building a business in a sustainable way economically as well as environmentally. So we're looking after the supply chain, we're helping the local community. And it doesn't always have to be financial. It can be people want torches or things like that, and they want help in their local community. And actually being a sustainable business is just almost looking at your supply chain and trying to add value to that, so that every business takes a fair share and not one big person at the top is taking a massive cut, a massive amount. So it's about leveling that playing field, I think, and making it more realistic for long-term success, really. So in those challenges, it's about becoming purpose-driven, and a change in mindset, I would say, is really valuing it. Right. And I think if you're a small business, you're struggling running your business. Yeah. It's hard to add this extra dimension to what you're doing, but it does pay off if you just start and slowly develop and get that journey going, like we said.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that perceived cost in that challenge is something we have to be really conscious of. As you say, the level playing field is critical. We can't have sustainability or certification out of the reach of all types of properties. It shouldn't just be for the big chains and brands who can be recognized for their efforts. It has to be available to all types of lodging and all size of business. And so I think, again, to that alignment point, we should be aligning not just for the benefit of consumers, but for the benefit of operators, so that you talk about the cost, it's also that cost of time of both monitoring and measuring and inputting data. And we hear that consistently from hotels and different types of lodging owners telling us that we spend so much of our time just from a reporting standpoint. As a sector, we have a lot of work to do to align on that. But again, Travalyst and Weeva and others are super involved in in initiatives to address how we create a much more streamlined approach from start to finish.
Yeah, that sounds, so it's so interesting hearing you both go back and forth on this. And so I'm curious to know, we've talked a little bit about the challenges, and maybe this is in the same vein as that, but what are the biggest growth areas that you see for sustainability with your partners?
Sure. Okay. So from Travalyst side, in terms of growth of opportunity, we see it very much about being how we can take data that is already out there and get it through to the mainstream, and then start to really empower consumers making better choices. So a big area of work that we've undertaken is on the aviation side. There's actually a ton of information out there on aviation emissions reporting and estimates, but it hadn't been collated in a centralized open access way. Through the work of our partner Google and the travel impact model, we have designed an approach that means that not only can those aviation emissions be combined and brought to the mainstream, but they can be adopted by anybody in a completely open to access and completely freely available way. So now we find that emissions are out there on platforms of, across all of our entire global coalition. So the Travalyst partners have a combined market cap of $3 trillion, and all of them have adopted the travel impact model. So that's going from a couple of years ago, there being no emissions data when you went to book a flight. Now you almost can't book a flight without seeing that aviation impact. So that's an incredible opportunity here. Now that we have that information in the mainstream, now we can start to look at, okay, how do we engage consumers in a more meaningful and active way? The same applies on the accommodation side as well, but as James was talking to, there's a different set of challenges there because the data just isn't available at scale. So there's a huge effort and massive opportunity there to collate that data together as an industry in a pre-competitive way, which is central to how Travalyst operates. We're an independent not-for-profit. We convene bodies and competing entities to drive this work non-competitively, because we believe firmly that sustainability data at its core cannot be owned by anybody. Great companies can go and take that data and build amazing services and products on top, but the core of this, to do this truly properly and at scale, it has to be centrally coordinated by a neutral entity, which is what Travalyst is doing.
Yes. Sounds like information is quite at the crux of everything.
Definitely. And I think just knowing what is a good target and what is a bad target is very hard to determine especially when you segment properties by climatic zone and seasonality, and whether they're a big safari lodge or a city hotel. The amount of dimensions when you start to segment for benchmarking is very difficult. So actually, you need it at scale. And like Sally said, it's like having a database which isn't owned by anyone will be, I believe, one of the biggest enablers to help the industry as a whole really understand what is good. And it shouldn't be owned by one independent body. And then we can start to actually use that data and really enable people to understand their position.
So with information being so integral to the advancement of sustainability, and kind of it sounds like understanding is at the center of that, I'm curious to know what you both think about, I guess, maybe this goes both ways, but it's a little bit separate, with industry partners and also with consumers. You know, especially on the consumer side, we've seen a lot about how, you know, travelers, they say they care about sustainability, but when they actually go to book something, it's not necessarily reflecting in the choices that they're making. And I'm not sure if it's the same on the partner side, but I'm curious to know how you think we can bridge that gap of, you know, we know it's important, but like, how do we get you to change your behavior, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think some of it comes down to behavior. I would say is one thing, I think, with different regulatory pressures now. The problem is no longer the consumer's problem, really. It's now become the hoteliers or the travel partner's problem now, really, is they will be the ones that are going to probably receive fines if they don't do this. And they are going to be the ones that are penalised. So they're the ones that are under the spotlight to do it. I think at the minute, like we have with carbon offsetting, it was the consumer's choice. And at the minute, I would say is the efforts are along the lines of essentially encouraging and supporting them to make better choices. But I think it will become industry-wide fairly soon. So my view would be is, you know, you've got a lot of regulatory pressures. Consumers, I think your research is kind of saying, like, consumers who value recycling will look for people that do the same or support those things. So they'll pay a little bit more for it. But I think it will shift so that everybody needs to do this. So.
Yeah, for sure. Everything you said, I couldn't agree with more. And I'd love to come back to the regulation piece as both an opportunity ahead, but kind of a challenge, as you say, to navigate. But yeah, at Travalyst, we think a lot about, people call it the say-do gap or the intention to action gap, because so many of our partners, Expedia, Skyscanner, Booking.com, they have, in all of their annual surveys to consumers, every year there's an increase in the proportion saying we care about sustainability, we understand what a problem this is, we want to do more about it. But again, we continue to hear, I need access to this information, I need it to be consistent, and I need it to be clear so I can understand it, not just a bunch of jargon and numbers. And I need to know that it's credible. I think there's two parts to this. The first is, as I was saying a moment ago, it's about scale. We've got to get the information, which is a mammoth Herculean effort, out there into the mainstream, right? And then once it's there, like we have found with the emissions data, we can then start to play around with how we make this accessible to consumers so they can really understand it and really act on it. I've been working in sustainable travel for almost 20 years. Kilograms of carbon still means nothing to me, but I love the way that Google, our partners, are taking those emissions values and they are giving pointers to consumers that actually make sense and make it relevant. So they use things like market reference data to say this flight compared to the average on this route is 20-25% lower emitting. That means something to me. Then they go as far as saying, and this means X number of cars off the road or X number of trees planted. So again, as a consumer, I can engage with it in a way that actually makes sense and empowers me to say, wow, actually I do have a choice and I can save 25% of emissions. That's actually huge. So it's the same on the accommodation side, is taking all the massive amounts of data that the likes of Weeva collect and tons of numbers and quantifiable stats and data points, and presenting those to consumers in a way that actually makes sense. So you talked, James, about things like waste and recycling and behaviours at the property that mean a lot to consumers. Travalyst has developed a list of 60 or so attributes that all of our partners align to. And so they're telling their consumers that this property invests in proper recycling, in proper supply chain management, they have fair wage policies, they have renewable energy, things that a consumer can actually see when they're at a property and really relate to. And I think that's crucial.
So a lot of it is information accessibility, it sounds like. So with all this in mind, obviously things have really changed. And so this is just kind of one final thing as we wrap up here. But what technologies are you seeing as most important as you look to advance your missions and ventures?
So for Weeva, we're focused very much on AI and machine learning, really to detect those patterns, to identify kind of the gaps where the opportunities really, and also AI as a learning tool, because I think there is a big skills gap of not everybody can afford sustainability officers, not everybody understands it, so we're investing in technology to help answer questions and support the start of the journey, really, because we know it's a journey and we may not be there for everyone, but it is that journey, so that's where we're focusing on.
And I think that's super relevant to then the substantiation of data piece, which is becoming a real focus of regulation worldwide, but especially in Europe. Substantiating information at a mass global scale is really hard, and we're going to need to unlock technology to support the industry with doing that. And I'm super excited by some of the work that's been doing by some of the scale-ups in this space. On Travalyst side, we really focus on optimizing the existing distribution that exists across this incredibly fragmented sector and making sure that we have the right data going into the pipes and the right data in a coordinated and clear way coming out the other end. I think, again, harking back to the travel impact model and the way that Google has built and maintained that and created an open access approach that means anybody through the API can plug and play those emissions estimates is just huge for achieving the kind of scale that is the first massive leap on our journey to truly driving sustainability across the mainstream.
That's great. Well, this has been super enlightening. Thank you both for joining me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Morgan.